we're thinking about things as like a computer-assisted frac.
Yep.
Where now if you are, it fits right in line with APR. If you had to spend a lot of time tracking activities and now there's an automated way to do it, how much more of the workflows and processes can we automate so that engineers that are off-site can actually go and start looking at a perforation analysis or, do some iterations and some analysis on job design. So it's really about making people on-site efficient and people that are off-site more efficient.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. My name is Daphne Paddock. I am the Senior Marketing and Communications Manager here at Coldbore. And today we're talking with Tyler Rutherford, who is our Product Manager at Coldbore Technology. And today we are talking about APR. What the heck is APR?
Great question, Daphne, and thanks for having me. Glad to be here in the Houston house. If we want to get into it, APR is Coldbore's automatic path recognition software. So we'll break that down. Automatic means that it's a piece of software that we turn on at the beginning of a pad. That software runs full-time with no maintenance, so you can expect full-time operation from that software. Path refers to Coldbore's, one of our core products, which is our critical path. So for every well on a pad, you have an activity every 24 hours that's tied to a well. You can have as many or as few activities per well, depending on the operations. And so the last piece of that is the recognition.
Okay.
And so the software actually recognizes, based on data, what actual event or activity is happening on a well. I like to call it a recorder because it's actually taking that event and writing it to the database. And so it's taking place of all the manual entry that typically happens on a pad.
So I guess if we have the APR, it can be recognition or recorder.
I like that too. Yeah.
Whatever.
Flexible.
Choose your own.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a big analogy guy, so I've been working on a good way to kind of introduce this. So if somebody's not familiar with operations on site or frac operations, I've got a good analogy that everybody can relate to, which is just driving down the road. Let's say, for instance, you're taking a road trip and you want to track all the activities that you do during that road trip that's related to the, your actual path or the time it takes to get somewhere, right? So you might actually have a log where you're going to write down every time you stop at a red light. You might have a log that says every time you take a turn onto a major highway. You might have something that says every time you made a wrong turn and you had to turn around. You might be writing those down. And so that is a driving path could be considered the same thing as like a well path. Okay. Every time you write down an event, somebody on site's doing the same thing for a well to record, what happened on that previous day's activities. And so our APR system is a piece of software that takes the data on pad and actually writes everything that you would have written down in your driving log. It actually writes it for you.
Perfect. Well, that actually takes me into my next question. Why is it important for the operator?
Absolutely. If we roll it back at the beginning of operations, whether it's frac, drilling, production operations, every well has a well file with it. And so an activity log is basically a record that operators have to keep so that if they want to go back and look at what happened on a well at a certain time, they can open up that well file. And it actually used to be giant filing cabinets before computers. And so now, once well management systems came around, that's software that operators use to keep track of their well file systems now. They have to keep up with this for various reasons, not just being able to look back on their operations, but also to share with partners. So if there's partners in a wells, somebody that's invested capital in an operation, then they're going to want to see that the actual operator was doing what they expected to on that job. So it's very important. It can come into regulatory as well. So if there's certain things that need to happen on a well based on that, governing site, then the operator will have to use that well file or activity log to go back and say that we did adhere to certain regulations. So it's very valuable, and there's a lot of different ways that people do it. But we really like our critical path, and the customers that are using it really like it.
Yeah.
It's all web-based. And this is kind of different than the full APR discussion, but it's all web-based. It's very intuitive to use. Anybody who's used a banking app can use our Critical Path app. And so we just are working on even making it a lot easier to use that Critical Path tool. So Derek is also in the product team, and him and the web team are working on making it just so much easier to track those activities on site to really reduce all the manual toil and the friction that comes with that. And APR is a great example of how we are leveraging ourselves in the data and software world to make it just almost obsolete for manual time tracking on site.
So how does APR work? How does it actually work?
So we have a team of 5 automation developers now. They're doing really advanced coding and algorithms using some advanced languages, things that I don't know anything about, but I know that they're super effective. They're doing a lot of programming in Elixir, which shout out to the Calgary Elixir group. I know there's a small group in Calgary that gets together and talks about advances in that coding language. So if you're in Calgary, check that out. I think you can find it on LinkedIn probably.
Okay.
In this coding language, they basically built a list of conditions. And when the data comes in on site, this is live data every second, up to date, no latency. It goes into this condition detection system. And when certain conditions are detected, there's some rules in there that says if conditions 1 through 4 and condition 7 are all true, then an activity starts. Okay. So if we'll roll it back to the analogy, I hadn't really thought through this, but we could probably come up with something on the fly. If you're driving in your car, and you want to record all the time that you're not actually moving, so you might be stopped at a red light. Some conditions would be, my car is at an intersection. My car is the brake on my car is engaged, and my speed limit is 0. That's all data that kind of relates to something that we could track on site. And if all of those are true, then we would say your car is stopped at a red light. And so very similar to, one of the most obvious activities that we track is pumping hours. So this is the frac provider, horsepower company. If they're pumping, it's really important to track that by day because that's usually how operators are getting billed and invoiced. And so there's conditions in there that says things like a certain valve is open. Another certain valve is closed. So we're actually using the valve data that we're collecting on site. Frac rate, so they're actually pumping greater than 0 barrels per minute. And so now we're actually able to say these conditions are true. This well, and it could be 1 out of 7 or 8 wells, however many on pad, will get assigned that frac fracturing block up until the point that they actually stop pumping. And so we'll record that in of pumping. Okay. And then once a valve is shut, depending on which ones we're monitoring, then we'll say the well is now isolated from frac. And so it's really neat to watch. If you're into nerdy stuff, there is there's a live feed of the conditions that you can watch on a computer screen, but it's just I'll be honest, it's a black screen with a bunch of white text on it. But it's really fun to watch, and especially when we roll out updates. Everybody gets in a room. Everybody gets in a Zoom room, I guess, and we go watch a live pad, and we can just, we're monitoring, watching all the data on our screens, watching the live feeds, and APR we're going to say, all right, in the next 5 seconds, we should get a new activity recorded, and then boom, it happens. Everybody cheers, and we move on, and that's how we kind of test things when we get a new feature rolled out for APR.
So cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what is benefit for APR for cold bore?
And kind of depending on the day or maybe what I'm focused on at the time, I really see APR as having 2 benefits. And so if I'm doing some analysis with our SME group, trying to look back on a pad to say, an operator wanted to know how much pumping time they had on this pad versus the last. I know that because APR was running, when we compare pad to pad pumping time, I know that we are comparing a very analogous data set. Whereas if you're relying on manual tracking, you're always having to account for a little bit of risk that somebody tracks something incorrectly. Somebody might not have been trained on how to actually track it as you expect it to, right? So a lot of consultants can be associated to one crew. And so if you're bringing on new consultants with a new crew, maybe you don't have time to train them, or maybe they're on night shift and you didn't have a good handover or something. There's always a little bit of assumptions that if you are not using something like APR, that you're still getting analogous data from pad to pad, day to day, shift to shift. We work with a lot of operators that work in different basins. And so naturally, just like how somebody might cook food differently in basins in different areas, it's all kind of regional. And so sometimes there might be a different way to track that time block data. And so with APR, you can be assured that if you're doing an analysis and you're coming up with observations, those observations are probably correct because we've got a standardized time log that comes out of APR.
Okay.
The second part of the benefits that I also see is somebody has less work to do, right? So that's a really good way to think about time tracking, because it's something that when you consider everything that's happening on a frac location, right? You've got tens of thousands of horsepower, pressurized fluid at high rate and high pressure. You've got a lot of different people coming in and off site. So really safety should always be everybody's first concern.
Yep, absolutely.
Then you've got to actually worry about, executing the job as expected. And then somewhere down around the bottom of your list of duties, right, you've got to worry about making sure that my time log is up to date in case somebody off site wants to log in and see exactly what's happening. So if you're watching over some type of critical operation, maybe you're outside of the van, van is kind of the control center. There's laptops in there. People are going to be using that to actually track their activities. Maybe they want to be outside of the van and actually checking on equipment or managing some new materials that are coming on a site.
Yep.
Then that can be assured that time log is going to be accurate and up to date without them actually, interfering or interacting with the computer.
Speaking about our recent announcement that we're partnering with Downing, how's that going?
Yeah, this is a really cool story. Every morning we get together on an operations call, and there's a few people that get to, bring up how things are going on our pads. We go over our pad count, upcoming work. And we just kicked off our first trial with Downing. We had 2 or 3 pads that we were working with Downing on. And up to that point, it had been really smooth. We were integrating with the main data sources that we get on every pad, just with Downing this time around. That's live real-time frac data, wireline pump down, and with Downing, we were able to get their valve data too. And we were looking into it, and we said, hey, this is the same number of valves and the same valve sensors that we would have put out on site. And somebody in the call said, I'm going to turn APR on. Right? So there's within software, I'm learning a lot about just kind of user access and making sure that features are, deployable. And that's one of them. We've got a list of about 20 features that can be turned or off, toggled per job. And in that call, everybody kind of looked around and said, yeah, let's turn it on. And kind of like I was telling you about the releases, somebody clicked, toggled the APR option on. We stayed in the room. We pulled up SmartPAD. We were watching the job live. And again, we said, all right, in about, maybe a minute or two, we should see a new activity populate from APR, because we were, noticed maybe they were coming close to the end of the stage.
Yeah.
And boom, it was right there. And this is great because with Downing, we're recognizing there's a lot of advantages and a lot of opportunities for us both in terms of manpower and reducing the number of men on site, which is always great from a safety standpoint, just less bodies around to worry about. And second, we're really leveraging the automated part of this, right? There was no special configurations. We didn't have to go to the development room and work on a bunch of stuff because of Downing, needed some type of special configuration. It was it was a very, base, generic, vanilla, came right in. We got the data, turned on APR, and now APR on the downing jobs. It looks just like as if a man was on site tracking these events. And so it was great. And now we're, that partnership is expanding, and on every job we've got APR. We check every morning. We got a new downing job coming up, and that's the first thing we do is turn on APR for those for that partnership.
That's amazing. And I know recently we did a post on social media about being 100% deployed APR. What does that mean for us?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a fun one. Alex Fortin, our director of technology, came down and said, "Hey, we've been building this APR tool for a long time. It is pushed to production, which means the guys are actually deployed the code. It's ready to work, but we didn't have it running on every pad. So kind of like I just talked about with downing, and we hadn't made a push to go in and push that toggle from off to on yet. There was a little bit of onboarding." There is a little bit of training that goes along with this. And so we made a push in March of this year where two things happened. Alex said, get APR turned on every pad. And so we kind of did a blitz on all the training and onboarding, got that done. And the developers pushed the last piece of logic that needed to be created. They had to generate a whole new type of logic for what we call master valve open operations. But over the time that we built, from the time we started to the time in March of 2023, we recognized that some operators naturally just do things a little differently. And so we built some new logic for the operators, mostly in the Northeast that we work with, so that even though they were operating slightly differently, they're still getting a fully automated critical path. And so in probably April of 2023, we deployed 100% of our APR compatible pads with APR.
Yay.
Yeah, so
big win.
Absolutely. That was a fun one, really, just because we saw a very clear goal.
Yep.
Like I said, helped by Alex making that a very clear OKR, and the teams got together and were able to execute. And I do want to say, coming up in maybe by the end of this year, into maybe beginning of next year, we will have our first Canadian APR deployed as well, and so we'll be able to maintain that 100% deployment into the new year.
So, how is SmartPAD positioned to cater to the future of completions?
Ooh, that's exciting. More on a personal level, to be honest. I took a product management role at the beginning of this year because I was always excited about, honestly, what I wanted to build. But didn't necessarily know exactly how to communicate that.
Yeah.
And so we've got a team of engineers, SMEs, and product people that we meet regularly on trying to build a roadmap. And so it's been fun to see us progress over time, where at one point we were just building what needed to be built by the end of the next 2 weeks. Now we're building things on a quarterly basis. It's getting a lot more intention around what we're building. There's a lot of product validation and planning and execution. And so now we are working on our 2024 roadmap.
Okay.
And before we even really worked on that, we've got to kind of figure out exactly what our vision is going to be. And so you're asking, what's the future of Frac? And it's always going to be a little hard to say.
Yep.
With pricing, and there's a lot of exploration going around just because of tier 1 acreage is getting drilled up or has been drilled up. And so there's going to be a lot of effort, I think, into helping engineers and operators be a little more creative and giving them some time back so that they can start making more out of their wells than they might have planned to originally. And so we're really trying to help the people that impact the success of a completion in a positive way.
Yep.
And so we're thinking about things as like a computer-assisted frac.
Yep.
Where now if you are, it fits right in line with APR. If you had to spend a lot of time tracking activities and now there's an automated way to do it, how much more of the workflows and processes can we automate so that engineers that are off-site can actually go and start looking at a perforation analysis or, do some iterations and some analysis on job design. So it's really about making people on-site efficient and people that are off-site more efficient.
That aligns really well with a lot of operators right now have initiatives to become more digital. So I think that we're hopefully answering that question right there. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's always been a question that we have worked on in the product team and with the BD group too, is operators who are digitally mature fit really well into our product, and we fit really well into their organizations. But not everybody has made that step yet. And so we're really wanting to recognize that with working with us, whether or not you're digitally mature, we still have some very obvious digital applications. The critical path is one. Where well management systems in the past they're old, they're clunky, they come with licensing, they have to be deployed on many laptops to be operated in the field, whereas ours is a web-based platform and should make that time tracking a lot easier. APR is a great digital application. We're actually, removing somebody's work out of their, their daily responsibilities. We've also got an automated stage report. And so in terms of the future, I think the more acronyms we can come out with that say automated in front is really kind of an easy way to think of things, just because that's really what we're trying to do, is make the data work, or, do more things with the data than just look at it, right? So with the stage report, we're able to take data, we can do a bunch of calculations on it, tied into APR. And so when APR detects the end of a frac stage, then ASR knows to go and calculate a bunch of calculations that we put into our database. Customers can access that through API or through Snowflake. And now they're getting the data a lot faster than they would have in the past, either dealing with Excel sheets or dealing with PDFs in some cases, right? So the oil field is, it's got some things working against it in terms of being, in terms of being able to digitally transform quickly. A lot of the frac sites are remote. There's not a ton of internet in some of these cases, right? So just in general, it has some challenges, but with cold bore, I think everybody's excited to kind of take those on together.
So Tyler, how reliable is APR? Does it ever go down? Is there any surprises that ever pop up with it?
In the past, there was. Something as simple as a software release happens usually on Thursdays. APR wouldn't go down, but we would have to go and restart it. And that release process takes a while. You have to sync down from the cloud to all the edge devices on every pad. And so there was an interruption in APR. And so about 6 months ago, that's one of the things that from a product standpoint, you might not be aware of. We're thinking about really awesome value driving things, but the devs are always worried about, making sure that what they build is going to be deployed and have 100% uptime. And so we did get a chance to fix that early this year, and Thursdays are no longer an interruption, so that's great. We hit on the remote challenges of frac, and so APR is dependent on good quality data, and what that means is live data, 1 second minimum frequency, and accurate. And so we are depending on, operators depend on the service companies that are sending us the data to make sure that their sensors are accurate, because like I mentioned earlier, the conditions do have to have that quality data to make sure that we're getting accurate time blocks. In some cases, we do lose connection on site to a important channel. And it's part of the work. It comes with the territory, right? If a truck drives over some cables that end up coming disconnected, now our data might go out for a certain channel that APR is depending on. We recognize that, and we built a system that says that'll actually alert us when we've got an operation that is impacted. So it's been great, because now we are an owner of the data set just as much as the operator.
Yeah.
Like I said, the developers, we really want to make sure that the tool is running and providing expected results. And so if something even like, it does run on the edge, but if there's a internet outage and now we're not seeing something, populate as we expected, there's a whole alert system that our ops RTOC team is watching on a regular basis. Now we know sooner than the operator probably that we need to go out and address something with the data. And so Cold Bore not only invested time and money to actually build APR, we've actually invested some ownership, right? And so data confidence, data quality, data integrity, we participate in that just as much as our clients do.
So were you surprised that you could do this much with the data?
I'm going to go way back and tell a story when Jason Ladner and I were working with Cold Bore in 2019. And we kind of asked the question, we said, hey, we're getting these valve position sensors, which is great on site. The guys on site have a panel. They can actually see the position of every valve on site in one location. But we were starting to ask ourselves, is there something more we can do with that data? And so we got at the time with Hector, who's still part of the automation team today, and we put some wellbore pictures up on the whiteboard and said, if these valves are closed, it means this, and if this valve is closed, it means something different. And at the time, Hector, I think was Cold Bore was tiny in 2019, and had a lot to work on. Right? I mean, we always have a lot to work on, but especially at that time, that was. So we were still spinning up operations, and Hector said, I don't think we can do that today. And now here we are. It's 4 years later. We've got 100% deployment. We've got 4 different logic sets in APR. We've got some more logic sets that are coming out next year. And we're going to be able to start running APR on pads that are already completed. So we call that our replay feature, and that's coming out. And so did I think with good data we could tell you if a well was in a frac state or not? Yes. Did I know that we were going to be building all these cool features 2 years into it? And, now we're picking up on cases where an operator might have a specific way to pressure up and prime up or equalize versus another operator. And so next we're going to be working on per job configurations. So if you, Daphne, are running an operation that's slightly different than mine, we can set those configurations up, and now you don't have to worry about not getting exactly what you expected because you've got some custom operations going. So no, I didn't think that we would be able to do everything that we have so far as accurately and as cleanly, right? So we have APR running on 3 times as many pads as we did last year. And with the increase in volume, there's been little to no delays, little to no interruptions. The developers that used to spend a lot of time last year and 18 months ago maintaining the system, now with 3 times as many pads, they're actually doing less maintenance on the system. And so it's really robust and a really impressive operation. We get to look at the results every morning or every afternoon. And some of the things we've noticed that are exciting is APR might be detecting anywhere between 100 to 400 activities in a single day on a pad. And for one operator, we captured over 20,000 events on a pad over a month.
Yeah.
That one's a really fun one to work on just because it's a simul-frac. It's got a lot of interesting and sometimes kind of difficult to track operations. But with APR out there, our technicians that used to be on site maintaining that critical path with with a lot of responsibility, now they're actually able to just keep up with QC and that data.
So is it pretty reliable with any type of frac? You said a simul-frac. What are the different types of fracs out there?
4 years ago, we put the most generic frac operation on the board and said, would this work? And we said yes. And we built that and rolled it out in 2022. We had that running on some pads, and it was helping the operator a lot. They were able to reduce some of their manpower. They were also doing some remote ops, and that helped them a lot just because now they're actually able to monitor more offsite than they would have if they didn't have the automated system. But we got to the probably summer of last year, and we said, all right, we need our next challenge. So let's put what other type of operations are there? And simul-frac was the first one. The way we were able to program it, simul-frac APR can run on simul-frac, it can run on a dual frac, it can run on tandem frac. But kind of a surprise that we saw was that in some operations, there might be a single frac crew, but multiple wireline units. That was kind of a surprise for us. And so we had to go in and build a configuration to manage that as well. So I think by now we've got just about every type of operation that we can imagine. Of course, operators are always being creative.
Always trying to stump you.
Yeah, always trying to stump us. So every now and then we do get in a situation where we've got to make an extra, customization. But nothing in the new year is going to be developed around new operations because I think at this point we've got all of them covered.